Welcome to Truth Uncompromised. I am your host, Rhonda. Join us every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Truth is peace. Truth is justice and freedom to love, live, and be. Music provided by SourceVibrations.com.
All right, family. We're back on Blog Talk. Sis and Brother Sean just pressed to get in the queue for me, so hold on a second. All right. Okay, sis, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Okay, cool beans. That's better. I had to come in another way, so we'll wait for Brother Sean to get back on. In the meantime, I got to try to figure out the YouTube feed. All of a sudden, it ain't working. Yeah, there's some straight bull crap.
Well, they gave us about 2 hours.
Yeah, because shoot.
Or is that nice?
Yeah, they was. Yeah, I know. How sweet of them. Bless their heart. Yeah, so we'll let Brother Sean get back in, but all of a sudden the settings got wiped out on the audio. So let's see if we can get this back on. So Brother Sean, just dial in. When you dial in, press 1. Yeah, I don't know how I can get the YouTube feed back online. This is so frustrating, y'all.
Yeah.
I don't know why they scared of little old us.
You talk too much truth. You call truth uncompromised.
Yeah, it's frustrating, though, because, whether or not I get on here and run my mouth, that's still not going to stop what's going on. It ain't going to stop it. Let me see if Brother Sean can get back in.
But they rather people be ignorant of it so they can vibrate lower. Because truth demands response.
Yeah, you would think. You would absolutely think. So let me see. Hit Brother Sean back up. See if he can get back on. All right. Can you get back on? Let me try to shut some of this other stuff down.
Now, you know that company that had the G5, they were putting their CEO in prison and jail and stuff. They're trying to restrict their global chip supply.
Okay. All right. Okay, Brother Sean, you there?
Yeah, they're asking what blog talk on YouTube.
Huh?
Somebody's asking what blog talk on YouTube. I guess they want to try and come to the blog talk feed.
They should be able to just go to Blog Talk Radio and type in Truth Uncompromised, and they should see us live and be able to get back in. Because they gave me a a stream, or they can dial in 929-477-3858, or they can come in via just searching for us on Blog Talk, searching for the live feed.
Oh, don't be quiet.
Your dog, like, listen, I'm trying to be heard.
I know it.
I'm sorry, what you say, Brother Sean?
Yeah, they just tripping on us because they can.
Yeah, it's all good, and but you know what I always say is this just a little show. What you tripping on? We don't pull in the 14, 15,000, 20,000 views. You know what I'm saying?
But the thing is, they know it only takes 1% to tip the scales because it's only 1% of them that's running fine. They ain't worried about the masses who they got being dumbasses.
Yeah, but what's tripping
you got to think about it. Majority.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. All them other people, they asking for money, this, that, or the other. They lying to people and got people filling out paperwork and all type of shit.
True.
So, you know, they playing right in the big. Yeah, they still telling everybody to be good citizens and to get along with the corporation. All that bullshit.
True that.
They can deal with that. They don't care what.
True.
They don't care what somebody know. As long as you still willing to be a good slave, I don't care what you know.
Right.
All this stuff is out here. They got to tell you everything that they're doing. Oh, but you know your boy Dr. Phil is listening. Phil Valentine is listening to Q now. Because in that last video when he was talking about the coronavirus and this, that, and the other, he got to showing an awful lot of Q posts.
I'm surprised. I thought he would be more on the spiritual side. Which is nothing wrong with the Q stuff. Don't get me wrong. I know that Q does it in. It's even the Q stuff to me is still covert operation. I don't take what he say as gospel.
Right. Well, Dr. Phil was.
Amen to that.
He was saying the same thing. You know, he was like, "How is it they writing all this stuff and then it's coming to fruition, this, that, and the other?" But that's just like how you were saying earlier. They got to tell you what they're about to do.
Right.
The thing is, just like we turned on each other, they turning on each other. Period.
Correct.
I mean, we just have to take advantage of it. To me, it's not about taking everything as that he say as gospel. I just look at him as, all right, as far as for all these predictions, the fact that he in the book of 100 years ago or whatever, he's just the indication to me of the end times. He's just a signal. He's not the Alpha, the Omega, or nothing. He's nothing to me. He's just a sign that this is the time that we need to be taking care of what we need to be taking care of right now. It ain't about planning for a certain day, this, that, or the other, like they'd love for us to do. Keep waiting for certain days and certain events to happen.
Exactly.
We got to make shit happen. And manifesting something, that means you got to do something.
Absolutely. I agree.
And it's already been took care of. It's already been took care of on the soul realm. Yeah. So all that's left for us is the physical manifestation of everything. All the things that we put out into the universe that we wanted in this pursuit of knowledge of self and everything. Everything that you've learned about self, You're supposed to be doing that now. You're supposed to be making shit happen, not just keep talking about who you are and just knowing who you are for the fuck of it. Once you know, that's supposed to lead you to action. You're supposed to be making some shit happen. I mean, when you find out that you're, quote, unquote, a god, you ain't supposed to still be running around acting like a human.
Agreed. I totally
so that's the
agree.
Next step. That's the next step we got to take.
I totally agree, and I guess what's frustrating to me is the fact that, I stopped being frustrated. I have to keep myself in check because, like you said, I have to realize that it is only going to be that 1%. That's what I have to keep realizing with myself, that it's only going to be that 1% that gets it. So with that said, I just sit back and watch all of the people that say, oh, they're spiritual, they're this, that, and the third, but they're still so dependent on the system. They're still dependent on the system. They're still waiting on some type of savior attached to the system. And I'm like, it doesn't work that way.
But that's part of the programming that they still follow into, not realizing that there are levels above the quote-unquote astral realm. They're thinking that the astral realm is just it, and not remembering or realizing that that is part of the program. That's why you see some of those other things there that can't make it beyond that. That's the highest that they can achieve to make them believe that they have souls and this, that, and the other. That's nothing but a spiritual dwelling. We have souls. Everybody don't have souls, so everybody can't go every place that we go. So they got their version of it to keep people trapped and not trying to go beyond it. People make it to the astral realm and get a little consciousness about it and think that they didn't made it, that it's all over. They didn't figure everything out, and then, like you say, then they wind up sick, they wind up this, they wind up that, they wind up going through this, they wind up going through that, and they can't figure out why. It's because you put a limit on yourself. You decided that the astral realm was as far as you could go.
You can go, yeah.
That's as far as you're going.
Yeah, that's a very good point, brother. And I guess just for me, that's why it's just so important for folks to really, truly get into knowing self. And I think people think they're into that, but that's not necessarily the case of what I'm seeing. To keep it real, that's not what I'm seeing. I'm not seeing that. Even the so-called, quote, conscious community, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it. So we'll just have to continue to let the shit play out the way it's playing out. And we'll just continue to keep doing what we're doing. But it gets frustrating when you're trying to just simply put information out and you run into fuckery like we're running into tonight. It gets very, very frustrating.
Yeah, I understand, but we've been hearing everybody go through this.
True.
But that's just them trying to control everything. Once we get back to the natural state of things, being able to communicate telepathically and things like that, we won't need a platforms. We got to get back to doing what we're capable of. I mean, what the ancestors did at this point in time, we're supposed to be able to do so much more than what they did. We're supposed to build on top of what they already have established. They laid down the foundation. We're supposed to be constantly building, creating new things as creators, not trying to recreate a past that failed.
Exactly. And you say that on a consistent, regular basis. Consistently. You have been consistent about that. Why are we always trying to recreate some shit that failed? Trying to worship these entities that failed. Literally. So, yeah, I totally agree with you from that perspective. So, all right, so it doesn't look like we're going to be able to get back up YouTube. So, sorry, family, we're just going to have to rock with what we do on Blog Talk, and then I'll just upload this part on YouTube because we were obviously zapped. All right, so here we go. We about to get into the nitty gritty. Purple Pill now. Shout out Purple Pill, Scotty Saturn. Bring the boy. Y'all was able to get up in here. So unfortunately, I can't even chat with y'all. So it's not that I'm ignoring you responding. I can't even get to the chat tonight. All right. So here we go. Part 2 remix. Hopefully 832 and 646 was able to get back in. I see 832. So here we go, family. Last week, we left off. Now, again, this is from White Trash, The 400-Year Untold History of Class in America by Nancy Eisenberg. She did an excellent job with this book. Her research is it's done very well in my eyesight. It certainly cross-references a lot of the things that I have learned in my research and just inherently started to put the pieces together to realize the game or the con that was being played on everyone. All right, so we were last week finishing up Andrew Jackson's story, okay, and the title of that chapter is literally Andrew Jackson's Cracker Country. So she, the author Nancy Eisenberg, had made a reference to Jackson being swarthy, okay? Swarthy means black. And then she also threw a couple of hints as well about his personality. And the personality that she was kind of describing kind of sounded like a melanated man. Yes, bring the boy. Yeah, Blog Talk do be messing up too and be wanting their money. Yeah, they be pissing me off. Absolutely. So.
You know, Rhonda.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You know that eel that was tied around his ponytail? You said that he probably was out there with the Indians because he was living with them and stuff. Do you know, I remembered after I hung up that in Great Britain, they actually hunt eels for sale.
Really?
Yeah, they have companies that do that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so that kind of got me back to the fact that he may be a Moor.
Well, they said that she said pretty much that he kind of came over here on an indentured servant contract.
Mhm.
So we assumed we assumed that he was, quote, quote, Caucasian.
Exactly.
But,
and that's,
yeah,
he still can be
exactly,
a Brit.
Absolutely, absolutely. He was just a melanated Brit that came over on an indentured servant contract.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So that dispels the myth, if anybody want to think, that it was just white folk that came over here on indentured servant contracts.
And the Brits are melanated. The British are the quote-unquote white folks.
Okay.
Because remember, ish meaning like.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, ish is true that. Ish is a light. That's true. That's very much so true.
Oh, you know. Mm.
Hey, sis, one more thing for Black Light Beam. In order for them to beat the corporation, Black Lightning and them needed the people from the hood, the very criminals that he grew up with, that he was locking up.
That's right.
Had to come back
did,
and help them. And they even talked about Bitcoin on there. And the character that Jill Scott plays, the character that she plays is the one who allegedly started Bitcoin.
Oh, damn, how did I miss that?
So I don't know. I guess that's their way of telling us a melanated woman is the one who actually created Bitcoin.
I sure missed
but her
that.
character is back alive. And they wound up needing the albino because something in his blood stabilizes that green light stuff. It stabilizes the metals. So even the albino brother is still needed. They even said on there that majority of it, when Black Lightning was testifying in court, they were saying that majority of the experiments was conducted on the quote-unquote blacks of Freeland.
Right. And notice Freeland.
Mm-hmm.
I found that very interesting. I found that extremely interesting.
Yeah, his
great-grandfather Freeland on there.
Mm-hmm. His grandfather or great-grandfather was the first meta. You know, like Brother A3T said. So that's them telling you again.
Brady played a grandfather.
He played a good role too. He played the hell out of it.
He did. He laid that role out. Absolutely, he laid that role out for sure.
What I found interesting was them admitting that this whole thing is, as far as for superpowers or whatever, started with melanated people.
Yes, they did. They did.
That's why.
Yeah, and that's why for melanated people, I want them to be clear on how all of this really started and stop trying to make the white folk the scapegoat, because that's only, 400 and something years and some change? And that 400 years didn't even happen the way they saying it happened. So it was melanated on melanated crime long before white folk got involved. Before white folk got involved. And it's melanated on melanated crime because it's a bloodline. Not all melanated people are of the same bloodline.
Exactly. It was a certain bloodline going around conquering and colonizing all the rest.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And those are those 13 bloodlines in that book.
Absolutely. And interestingly enough, I ran across another channel because I recommended Autodidactic for you all. I highly recommend him. He drops a lot of good work as well. I'll have to get the other channel for you. Yes, Scotty Saturn, Dr. Stewart repping the European Moor bloodline, the Stewarts. Yes. At Black Lightning, at the very last scene, when they had to go to court and break down everything that happened with the experiments in the labs, this, that, and the third, her name tag, Black Lightning's wife name tag, listed her name as Stewart. And I looked at that, I said, you got to be kidding me. Are they kidding me? They just going to put this right up in our face?
Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, family. So where I'm going, I'm sorry, go ahead, sis. Go ahead.
I just got a text from my son, but I don't know if this is truth or not, but they have arrested Pope Francis on March the 21st at 4:30 in the morning by the Secret Service of the Italian Carbonari. He was in prison under house arrest in his summer residence outside of Rome.
Yeah, that's true.
I didn't even finish. That's true. That's cool. He's on that. I know he had disappeared. They didn't say how come he disappeared. But did you know that they're not going to announce it until World War III? So
we in World War IV, so
right.
They're going to go back to time.
John, we in 4.
Yeah, but they said that until World War III, and it will be released by the Islamists when they invade Rome. What kind of mess is that?
Well, the Vatican went down first. That's where the first mass arrests began at. I mean, they actually got the whole layout sheet of which regions they gonna hit first. I mean, first it was the Vatican, then it was Saudi Arabia, then I think it's supposed to be Iran and Iraq or whatever, and then the next stop is here.
Right. Yeah, they're here now, coming in.
Yeah, that's supposed to be happening Easter weekend, according to Q and Trump. That's why I'm excited about this Easter weekend. I want to see what happens. I'm just to me, it's like like when they show previews of next week's show. You'd be like, I gotta watch this. I gotta see what happens. That's all that means to me. I'm just waiting to see what's going to happen.
Yeah. Esotericism says a pope was arrested. How did you arrest the pope?
Well, they hit him with that coronavirus first. He got sick with the cold. I guess he couldn't fight. I don't know.
Well, again, I was having this conversation with a brother on Facebook. Okay, we got to have a receipt. So they've
assassinated a pope before. They've assassinated popes, replaced popes.
Yeah, I heard they
remember
on all the time.
The Godfather thing. I think it was in Godfather 3 they showed you when they assassinated the Pope. I mean, it's all the crime family. I mean, the mob is running everything. We call them the Illuminati, this, that, and the other, but to just break it down to the most simplest terms, it's the mob.
Yeah. It depends on what mob boss you want, right?
Right. I mean, anybody was capable of being whacked.
Right.
I mean, it's just too much out about him and all this pedophilia and everything. I mean, there's no place to hide now for any of them. And I believe that some of them are actually trying to do right because they worried about them things up there in the sky that they can't do a goddamn thing with.
Yeah, exactly. Because at the end of the day,
they trying to appease
that's
other
really
people,
going
not us.
on.
They ain't trying to appease us because they see we ain't ready yet. They like, we still ain't thinking about you motherfuckers. But y'all peoples up in the sky shit, that's a whole different story. Now, I'm going to try and explain some shit to them, try and iron some shit out with them, but as long as y'all continue to go along with this shit, they ain't going to do a goddamn thing about that. They going to try and help clean up the planet, so yeah, we going to try and help clean up the planet a little bit, because that's what they mainly here to help, bro. You still got to fight for your goddamn self. So they just trying to show that they trying to do right by the planet, trying to get rid of certain motherfuckers with certain things, this, that, or the other. Beyond that, they like, fuck you niggas. We still don't give a fuck about y'all. Fuck you. You don't know who you are. You ain't trying to do shit. You ain't tapped in.
Right.
You ain't doing nothing. They know who tapped in and who ain't.
Yes, they do.
That's why they ain't got to sit up and monitor every goddamn body. By your frequency, by your actions, they already know that they fucking got you. I'm not worried about you. You ain't going no goddamn way. Everything you do is according to what I told you to do. I ain't even fucking worried about you. But you niggas that ain't been showing up to get these vaccines and showing up at these rallies and protests and putting your emotions and everything all out there. No, y'all the motherfuckers that I'm watching. You motherfuckers, y'all the ones up to some shit.
Right.
So that's the reason why they fucking with us. They like, them niggas, they up to some shit.
Right.
Everybody ain't running over there. So it ain't nothing but intelligent motherfuckers over there. There's motherfuckers over there that can cause us some goddamn trouble. So we need to fuck with them. Everybody else, we know what them dumb motherfuckers doing. They debating, lying to each other, trying to get money out of each other. I mean, they doing everything. Right. They doing everything we want them to do. But them other motherfuckers, they talking about independence. They talking about being free and shit. We can't have niggas running around talking about being free and thinking for themselves. Not no thinking niggas. We got to get rid of them thinking niggas.
Right. And the fact, what? They done caught on to the black-white thing? Oh, you got to be bullshitting me. Who the hell are they?
Right.
So that's a very good point. So it is what it is. So we'll just, I'll just upload this to YouTube because literally all my settings got wiped out. So I can't even make it over to YouTube to stream live. So I'll get it back up. So here we go, y'all. Now, this is what got me. I can't make this shit up, y'all. I don't know if y'all remember when we did the show on melanated people being indigenous to the Americas, and we talked about how there was some funny business going on with that whole Africa, out of Africa theory. And then we talked about Negro land and how there was a ploy to get melanated people to set up shop in West Africa. And that actually did happen through one of their companies. Because remember, they set everything up under a corporation. So through that Dutch West Indian company. All right. So I was just straight, my mouth just straight dropped, y'all, when this lady said in this book, the Herald Democrat Andrew Jackson, as it was pointed out in the 1828 campaign, had actually helped draft suffrage restrictions for the Tennessee Constitution in 1796. He made no effort to expand the electorate in his state ever. as the territorial government of Florida in 1822, he was perfectly comfortable with the new states imposing property requirements for voting. Jackson's appeal as a presidential candidate was not about real democracy then, but instead the attraction to a certain class of land-grabbing whites and the embrace of the rude instinct of masculine liberty. He did not stand for universal male suffrage. Indeed, it was not the United States. Now, this is what blew me away. But Liberia, a country founded by the British and former American slaves, that first established universal suffrage for adult men in 1839. Now, when we talked about Negro land, we told you that through that Dutch company that they set up a charter to do business, to set up colonies over in Africa. And that area was called Negro land. Now, some people going to argue and say that Negro land, that's what Africa was named, woo, 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 this, that, and the third. Hey, that's neither here nor there. What these receipts say in the corporate paperwork is that this Dutch Indian company set up to do business over in, quote, quote, Negro land, which was Africa, West Africa, Liberia, and melanated people from the Americas and from Britain was sent over there to set up colonies so they could have their, quote, quote, dreams. So what struck me was, if Andrew Jackson was not melanated, and if he did not, the men that he was supposed to give them something once he got into office, why would they turn around and stand up Negro land, specifically Liberia? And Liberia, they had a melanated man running it. Okay, so it was a double cross going on. Andrew Jackson got put into power by poor whites that came over on indentured servant contracts, as well as melanated Brits. And at the end of the day, he cut them out of whatever deal that he struck with them, and with what the Crown said that he needed to do and that he better have done. And so then those Brits went and struck a deal to go over to Africa and set up a colony to do business. And a melanated man was over that. And so esotericism says, does Liberia have the rubber trees, which is what Firestone colonized and monopolized? That I don't know for sure. Esotericism, I would have to check to see what resources that Liberia had. So I'm sorry, go ahead, sis.
No, I said, let me see. I'll look it up.
Okay. And so in the meantime, I'm going to give you all some background on the Dutch West Indian Company. This is coming out of the Encyclopedia Britannica. Okay, now how the hell did it jump to that? I didn't even touch that. All right, let's start this over again. Dutch West Indian Company, by name of West Indian Company, Dutch West Indische Company, okay, Dutch Trading Company, founded in 1621. Okay, and that's the same company family when the Dutch came over to do business. It was under this same company umbrella. So the Dutch Trading Company, founded in 1621, mainly to carry on economic warfare against Spain and Portugal by striking at their colonies in West Indies and South America.
That's
and
rubber.
On the West. Okay, it is rubber. Okay, esotericism. Did you hear that, sweetie pie?
Iron ore, gold, diamonds, natural rubber, and vast forests for logging and timber harvesting. And that's something else. Mm-hmm.
There, and that's Liberia, sis.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Yep. So that's verified. All right. Sorry. Let me bring up my screen. Bring up my screen again. No. It's all good, sis. There we go. All right. So to carry on economic warfare against Spain and Portugal by striking at their colonies in the West Indies and South America and on the west coast of Africa. All right. So that would line up with the Liberia stuff. Right. So make no mistake. Let's just remind each other that West Indies and South America is still a part of the Americas. While attaining its greatest success against the Portuguese in Brazil, which is still a part of the Americas, in the 1630s and 40s, the company depleted its resources and therefore declined in power. It was dissolved in 1794. Governed by a board representing various regions of the Netherlands, the company was granted a monopoly of the trade with the Americas and Africa and the Atlantic region between them. With military and financial support from the States General, the Dutch National Assembly, the company acquired ports on the West African coast to supply slaves for plantation in the West Indies and South America. All right, so that's what they say. We do know that the slave part, they wasn't trading as many, no millions of slaves as they claim they were. All right, but the company's trade, however, was never sufficient to finance operations against Spain, Portugal, and England in areas where the latter were well equipped to defend themselves. Using booty acquired from the capture of the Dutch seaman Piet Hein, part of a Spanish treasure fleet off Cuba in 1628, the company challenged the Portuguese hold on Brazil beginning in 1630 and attained its greatest success during the administration of Count John Maurice. The effort proved too costly, however, and the Dutch company capitulated in the Portuguese in 1654. The company also established. Shit, I done lost my area. The company also established several colonies in the West Indies and Guyana between 1634 and 1648, including Aruba, Caraca, and St. Martin, but later lost many of them to the French. The Dutch colony in North America, New Netherlands, remember we told y'all this, and shout out to Purple Pill. Purple Pill was the one that hipped us to this as well. The Dutch colony in North America, New Netherlands was renamed New York in the mid-1660s, became a province of the company in 1623. So I'm going to just read that slowly for you all again. Because folk be thinking 1776 is the end all to be all, and we keep telling y'all, no, you got to go back further than that and start tracing these companies to really see who was who and how they were really doing it. So, the Dutch colony in North America, New Netherlands, renamed New York in the mid-1660s, became a province of the company in 1623. A combination of low Dutch immigration, autocratic administration, and underinvestment, however, damaged the ability of New Netherlands to compete with the neighboring English colonies, and it was ceded to the English in 1667. The Dutch West Indian Company was much less successful than the Dutch East Indian Company, its counterpart in Southeast Asia. We keep telling you all that this is all about trade, commerce, conquering indigenous people's land for the purpose of extracting resources. We keep telling you that all of these systems are interconnected, all right? So now you may have some of these bloodlines that fight each other over these territories, but at the end of the day, it's still the same thing, still the same system. And that's what folks didn't get back then, and they're not getting it now. They're still not getting it. And people keep talking about ushering in a one-world government. What are you talking about? That's already in place.
Mm-hmm.
The West India Company was taken over by the state in 1791 and was dissolved in the wake of the French invasion of the Dutch Republic in 1794. Okay, so that was the first company that struck up. All right, so let me pull the article. This is off of Wiki on Liberia. Okay. History of Liberia. Liberia is a country in West Africa, was founded by free people of color from the United States. I'm going to say that again. Liberia is a country in West Africa which was founded by free people of color from the United States. The immigration of free people of color and later former slaves. Now, did you all catch that? Immigration of free people of color. Now, I can only go under the assumption that the free people of color represent those melanated Brits, okay? And later former slaves, all right? So later, either indigenous folks, probably a lot of indigenous folks to the Americas, and probably some of the Brits too that still fell up under slavery and indentured servant contracts. was funded and organized by the American Colonization Society. The mortality rate of these settlers was the highest in accurately recorded human history. Of the 4,571 immigrants who arrived in Liberia between 1820 and 1843, only 1,819 survived. In 1847, the American Colonization Society, the ACS, encouraged Liberia to declare independence. As the organization could no longer support the colony against territorial intrusions by neighboring British and French, the ACS, as well as several northern state government and local colonization chapters, continued to provide money and immigrants as late as the 1870s. All right, so let me take a sip, y'all, because I need for us to truly, truly understand this. Scotty Saturn goes, American Indians, niggers sent to West Africa, Niggerland, Nigeria, absolutely. Absolutely. And that entire territory, they wind up calling it Negro land. Bringing it, boy, those were the Irish. I could see that. Bring it, boy. I could see it being the Irish, the melanated Irish. So here we go, though. This is the thing that I want y'all to peep game. In 1847, the ACS encouraged Liberia to declare independence. As the organization could no longer support the colony against territory intrusions by the neighboring British and French, the ACS, as well as several northern state government and local colonization chapters, continued to provide money and immigrants. So in other words, they were still shipping people over to Liberia. So this shit is so deep, family, and I encourage you to go check out Autodidactic, and I'm going to get the other dude's name. It's another dude. He out of Russia. He's really tight with his info. Also, how they were moving people around and switching their identities for the sake of claiming stake in those lands to do business. So it was a reverse migration that they were doing as far as Africa is concerned. Absolutely, esotericism. I was getting to that. We were so on white folks doing these treaties, but it was the melanated folks mixing with the general population to disguise the real plan. Absolutely. Dublin means black. Yes, purple pill. Dublin means black. Okay? So if you all do even more research, you'll know that those Berbers or those Moors out of North Africa were already in the slave trade, but they were trading white folk. So they started trading white folk from Africa. You have to go pull those ancient maps. You have to pull those ancient maps where white folk had kingdoms in Africa. Those ancient maps show white people having kingdoms in Africa. And it shows the Moors had like a territory in Africa that was like the size of a state. All right? So they started warring with each other, and the Moors started trading white folks into slavery across to Asia, across to Europe. All right? So then in the meantime, America, once the greed spilled over into the Americas to start taking over the Americas land, then it was the indigenous people in the Americas that the identity switching started. So they started, now we know, moving melanated Europeans that had came from Europe over to the Americas. And because it didn't shake out for the melanated folk to continue running the Americas, being the front face of it, then okay, we'll set you all up over in Africa. So the reverse migration started to happen with melanated folks out of the Americas and Europe going over to Africa. Now, this the part that we're going to find out what went on. And again, shout out to Autodidactic, shout out to John Levy, shout out to this Russian cat. Oh, that's his name. It's another guy called Conspiracies Are Us. He has some tight stuff too. Check him out. Conspiracy Are Us. One of them talk about these orphans that started showing up in the Americas in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And the orphans were Caucasian children showing up on the scene. And then some of the documentation that the person pulled showed that these children, these white children, were coming from Europe, and the reasonings that they were giving for these children to be orphans is that their moms were having children out of wedlock and couldn't take care of them. So like a bunch of Caucasian children in the late 1800s, early 1900s showed up in the Americas as orphans. All right? So I'm saying all this to say this is the identity theft and game that has been played on the populace to mix it up. So people really don't know who they are. If your family lineage doesn't keep that lineage alive, telling you the true origins of your family. And it would make sense why Caucasians would really not know where they came from if they hit these shores as orphans. So if your folks hit the shores as an orphan, you can only go by whatever narrative they gave you. Okay? Just like the history books that they put before us, that millions of Africans came from Africa over to the Americas as slaves, but yet they don't have any records. And now they're backtracking saying, well, no, it wasn't millions. I think last thing they put out, they said it was 20,000. Okay? But the point of the matter being is that they were doing the shuffling of people. Didn't matter if you were melanated or if you were Caucasian. The game was to get ownership of the land and of the resources. So conquer the indigenous people, kill them off, make them citizens, and then shuffle them around. All right, so I'll pause in case Brother Sean or Sis, you want to put something on it.
All I can say right now is pay attention to the dates.
Yep.
Whatever city you're in, look at which date it was established.
Mm-hmm.
Let you see that they ain't been in control that long.
Mm-mm.
And they ain't got the power that they say that they do.
Mm-hmm.
We done already proved time and time again who's running things behind the scene.
Exactly.
But I digress.
Well, I heard when I was doing some different culture studies that a lot of the European children were coming up missing. They were being kidnapped as well.
I heard that too. Out of Europe, you mean? I heard that too.
Out of Europe, they were being kidnapped.
Yeah, that's what I heard too. That's what I heard too. And they were saying that they were being kidnapped to come over here and basically work.
Right, and I think a melanated work. You have to basically work. And I remember, if I remember, there was a melanated girl, her family, somebody in her family was kidnapped from over here, taken over there. So they were just kidnapping children, period.
And so bring it, boy. So it was white people as slaves on the ships that were sent to America. They were on the ship so long they turned black. You're not comprehending what I said. You're not getting it. Because I didn't say white people came over from Africa to America.
You see his profile picture, right?
Oh yeah, I see it.
He's being
but he
sarcastic.
Needs to comprehend. You need to comprehend. I specifically said that the Moors were trading white people through Asia and through Europe first. Okay. So
he tried to be sarcastic, and I'm tripping on his grammar and the way he's spelling everything. But you want to sit up and be sarcastic and think that you're correcting somebody with incorrect information or rather sarcasm. In other words, what he's trying to say is they didn't know white people come over here on those slave ships. Saying if they did, they sat on the ship until they turned black.
Right, and he first of all, he wasn't even comprehending because that's not what I said.
I'm not.
So I think,
trust me, sis.
Yeah, hopefully he got it. In his defense, he did say working on it. Okay, thank you. No, yeah, that's not what I said. You have to go look at the Barbary slave trade on how white people were used, were traded from Africa. The important point I hope that you get, that white people had their own kingdoms in Africa and were warring with the Moors. And the Moors took white people captive and put them to, slave traded them in Asia and then slave traded them in Europe. That's how, for the most part, white people got to Europe, and why white people were the Slav and so poor in Europe. And then in order to get out of the poverty in Europe, and not only white people, melanated folks too, because the conditions were so horrid, some of them jumped at the chance at the indentured serving contracts to come over to the Americas. So that was the flow.
And also, there was an article last week on, I have a copy of it, that they found the origin of everybody, white people in Botswana, that they came up out of this lake. And they could trace them back to one ancestor, and her name was Eve, but not the Genesis Eve, but they called her Eve. So they were generated, according to their own scientists, I just read, in Botswana in Africa, in this lake.
Indeed. So esotericism goes, watch the movie Gangs of New York. And I try to get through it. It's so bloody. I try to get through it. Martin Scorsese pretty much explains the white slavery through the Irish.
Great movie. Great.
It is. It was really about gang warfare. Absolutely. I've tried to get through it, y'all. They just so violent. I'll have to try again, but absolutely. Okay, so the United States declined to act on request from the ACS to make Liberia an American colony or to establish a formal protectorate over Liberia. But it did exercise a moral one over Liberia, intervening when European powers threatened its territory or sovereignty. As a result, 11 signatories established the Republic of Liberia on July 26, 1847, eventually electing the Virginia-born Joseph Jenkins Roberts as the nation's first president. Liberia retained its independence throughout the scramble for Africa by European colonial powers during the late 19th century, while remaining in the American sphere of influence. President William Howard Taft made America support a priority. From the 1920s, the economy focused on exploitation of natural resources. Okay, so here you go, esotericism. The rubber industry, specifically the Firestone Company, dominated the economy. Until 1980, Liberia was controlled politically by, now I want y'all to peep this, Liberia was controlled politically by descendants of the original, and they threw in here, African American settlers known collectively as Americo-Liberians, who were a small minority of the population. Now, I'm going to throw in there and correct that it was by the British, the melanated British, who came over to the Americas. And when their boy Jackson crossed them and didn't give them what he promised them, the right to vote, the right to have a seat at the table, they went and struck their own deal with the crown. All right, well, fuck it. We'll go over to Liberia. We'll go over to Africa, and we'll set up shop over there. So, again, essentially do the same thing that was done all across the planet and more recently in America. Set up shop, set up business, set up charters, set up a colony for the purpose of extracting the resources for profit to be paid back to the crown, a certain percentage. Those were melanated Brits. All right? And it's very interesting that they say who were a small minority of the population. So in other words, came on these people's shit over in Africa, just a handful of them with the fuckery. with the charters and the commerce in hand. Okay, so between 1980 and 2004, the violent overthrow of the Americo-Liberian regime led to years of civil war that devastated the country and its economy. So in other words, same script, same exact script that happened over in the Americas. The indigenous people went to war. They were like, no, fuck that fuck shit. All right? Historians believe that many indigenous people of Liberia migrated there from the north and east between the 12th and 16th century A.D. Portuguese explorers established contact with people of the land later known as Liberia as early as 1462. They named the area Pepper Coast or Grain Coast because of the abundance of Meligetta pepper, which became desired in European cooking. In 1602, the Dutch established a trading post at Grand Cape Mount, but destroyed it a year later. In 1663, the British installed trading posts on Pepper Coast. No further known settlements by non-African colonists occurred until, let me take a sip. My water, y'all. We keep trying to tell y'all. You got to flip everything they told you. You got to reverse that shit. No further known settlements by non-African colonists occurred until the arrival in 1821 of free blacks from the United States. So who were the free blacks of the United States more than likely? It was the melanated Brits. All right, so I'll pause, Brother Sean or Sis, in case you want to put something on it before I get back into it.
Go ahead, Sis.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry.
No, I was going to go. I thought Sis Sandra had said something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but considering they were the ones that cut all the deals, signed all the treaties, knew the terminology, knew the game, because they taught it according to them. Who else could it be but the Moors? I mean, they claim to be everything in history.
Right.
And they say that everybody that's melanated is a Moor.
Well, we know that.
Right. No, that ain't true.
Right, because, I mean, if that was the case, then you telling me that they were running around conquering other Moors?
Yep. You know, the Moravids out of West Africa were the Canaanite Moors, like the Moorish temple. Remember that video I sent to you, Rhonda?
You sent me a video,
or no more misunderstanding. The Moors.
I can't remember this, but I'm sorry. But go ahead, sweetie.
Yeah, the Berber Moors or Noble Drew Ali's lineage was the Moors that was coming up out of Africa, and they went into Spain and started conquering Europe, and then they went in and came over here, started doing their conquering over here as well. That's what the records show. It wasn't the Negro Moors, but it was the lineage of Ham. And it was the Berbers, the Liberians, the Ethiopian Moors.
Absolutely, because just that term Moor alone, can mean black.
Anybody.
But we're talking about the North African folk.
Right.
Absolutely.
And then they were taking Europeans into captivity off of, in between that Strait of Gibraltar, I guess it was, where they were taking the ships and capturing them and bringing them here. And that's
over to the Americas, right?
Over to the Americas. So it was not the royal Moors that was doing that. It was the Hamite Moors. The Hams. Because if you look at the definition of black people, it says except the Negro. Because they knew the Negro wasn't Negroes, but American Indians. They knew that. That Negro is their title. So I was sitting here listening.
It was the nobility. How else did they have the money to raise armies? How else did they have the knowledge and everything to build?
That's not what the record shows. What's his name? Camilo? Who?
Camilo.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about, but the bottom line is, for any so-called king to have a kingdom, you had to have subjects.
Yep.
So either way it go, whichever ones you're talking about, it's all during the fall. It's under it's up under the patriarchal system. It's not matrilineal at all.
Right.
So whichever one of those kings you're talking about, they always bad. Yes, they people.
I didn't say they weren't bad, but I know what you're saying, but empire came up. It's not the European Moor like James's side. King James, that's not the same side.
Remember, yes, it is, because remember King James and them, they said that they were the Romans and every goddamn thing else.
That's what he said.
It's the same bloodline.
But wait a minute now. If everybody was melanated, everybody can't be a Moor because the Moors are the Moabites. So the Moabite or the...
I understand all that. I'm just saying what today's Moors are saying. I'm not talking about what the quote-unquote ancient Moors. I'm just saying the Moors nowadays try and tell us we all Moors.
And well, they're telling them that lie because that's not truth. That's what I'm saying.
Know that.
That's what I'm saying. Because there was 3 lineages out there. There was Ham, Shem, and Japheth. So the Hamite Moors are the Moors of this age. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but as you see in that book, they only list and talk about certain bloodlines. But all the people that were being conquered in the name of that God had their own bloodline.
That's right.
Well, the Moors had Allah, that's their God.
No, I'm saying, it's me. The Moors had it all. They was Christians, they was Muslims, they were everything. Mm-hmm. Wherever they went, they absorbed everything. Mm-hmm. Period. I mean, if they started off, like he said, that they were the Greeks, the Pharisees, the Phoenicians, and all these different people, and they just changed their names with each conquest or with each new age, but it was still the same bloodline.
Oh, the Phoenicians and the Greeks, yes. Mm-hmm. I agree with that. That's what it says in
those
the
bloodlines that are talked about as far as for those that are ruling, they have always been the conquering bloodline as long as we've been up under this patriarchal system.
Absolutely.
They are the rulers of the fall.
Absolutely. And even in Brother Caramayo's breakdown, when he showed that tree, it still come from, you see what I'm saying, sis? He showed where it was just branched off, but
yeah, but he branched out in 3 directions on Ham. He branched off in 3 directions on Shem.
It
he
doesn't
branched
matter.
off in
That's sis. That is like saying, here is a tree, and this tree grows, and it has branches that go right, branches that go left, branches that go up, branches that go down. Who is the source? Aren't those branches still a part of that tree?
But the interference came in with the fallen angels, according to what they say. The Moors say it themselves.
No, sis. I'm sticking with this tree. We on this tree, right?
I know your tree. I understand your tree. But, I know my cousin. I have cousins, and we all came from the same tree somewhere along the line. But then we have splitting off of the trees, but other cousins and other people from other branches coming in. That's what I'm talking about.
So what you're describing is, I'm going to get back to that tree. Now, that tree is that tree. Now, if there's another tree next to that tree, that's a separate
They get grafted in.
So if you graft, you're blending together. But if it's a separate tree and someone off of one of the branch linked up with another tree off another branch, that's something separate.
So if you're going to go it that way, and we all came from the same branch, then Shem, who was the father or the progenitor of the American Indian, is a Moor too. So
who said that Shem is the progenitor of the Indian?
Yeah, that's what they say.
That's what they say.
Is an Indian? Is a Moor too?
So Shem is responsible for all the Indian tribes. Is what you're telling me?
The American Indian.
You said he's the progenitor. So you're telling me that a man. You saying that a man is the progenitor.
He was the father. They didn't say that. They don't ever
Indians.
tell us about the mother. You know that in the darn book.
I'm just saying.
Right. So
still,
why
even
are we
with a
basing
woman.
it off the father? Exactly.
I'm just talking about what is grafted into the script.
Even if we knew who his woman was, you mean to tell me that those two people are responsible for every Indian tribe here?
That's what the line was. Yes, from Shem. That's how they labeled it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just telling you what they labeled.
And you actually repeated that.
Yeah, I did. I really did.
It's all good, sis. It's all good. We just had to point that out to put it in perspective. But bringing in, Boy said, Nephilism is the key to your tree, referring to the fallen angels.
Yep, and that's exactly what the Moors say. That's exactly what the Moors, the ones that you do this doctrine here, they're telling everybody that they Moors, that's exactly what they say in their stuff. They fallen angels. What? They angels.
That they fallen angels? That they are the fallen angels?
They angels.
Well,
yes.
I mean,
they do. They said seeds of Lucifer. Matter of fact, when Camille went through that stuff, they said they come off the line of Goliath. That was their king.
Well, it would make sense to me. I'm not disputing that at all because I
that's what he said. I was like, what the heck?
The series. That's why I recommended the video.
Yeah.
That's exactly why I recommended the video to show who was whom.
Yes.
But that does not.
And so the Moors of present day.
But wait, sis. I'm trying to finish my point.
Yep.
That does not mean everybody is of that bloodline.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. So when you go back to the tree, you can't say it either.
Okay, well, all right then. So here we go. So I want to get back into. Oh shit! Hold on.
One more thing before you get there. Didn't the Moors say that they were the fallen ones because they
said they're angels, children of Lucifer. That's the 100 questions I do believe.
Now, I'm just saying the Moors are from Mars. They're the fallen ones. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying. I mean, where are the Moors actually from? They say that they're from Mars.
It's like okay, we got Oprah Winfrey, who's a Zulu. And you said the Zulus are from where? Venus? From Mars?
They said where they was from. They
I ain't say nothing. Right.
I mean, you mentioned it. Let me put it like that. So she's a Zulu. So she's not part of my bloodline.
I don't ever remember anybody claiming that demon.
No, I'm just saying the bloodline split. Even though they have the title, they say they are who they are, and the lesson or the documents say they the seed of Goliath. That's what it said when he was doing his little series.
Right.
And I'm
I know what he said. That's why I recommended the video.
Oh my goodness.
Because I did a year and a half on the creation story myth.
Yeah.
And I laid out the bloodline. So I know exactly what he said. That's why I recommended the video, trying to get folks to see that fallen angel bloodline.
Yep. And that's how the Moors got their title, Moors, because they mix with fallen angels.
But again, all Brother Sean and I was saying was, what do that have to do with other indigenous people around the world? You cannot lump everybody under that category.
I didn't lump them under the Moors. You did.
No,
I said that.
No. I didn't. You trying to sit here and tell me I lumped the indigenous Indian under the Moors? No, I didn't. You did. You
With
Shem.
With Shem.
With Shem. Yeah, because Shem, according to the creation story, Shem, Japheth, and Ham are all brothers.
Mm-hmm. I get that. I'm familiar with the creation story.
So if Shem, Ham, and Japheth are all brothers, then their children and their children's children are all related. That's what I'm saying. And Ham is the progenitor of the Moors.
So
I'm not disputing any of that. You the ones brought in the American Indian, not me.
Shem
you brought
is
it
the American Indian side, and he was the brother of Ham.
Okay, so you just said it again, but you just said that I said it, and it's about the.
No, I'm just saying that's what. If you go back to the tree, you can't put them all together. That's what I'm saying, because there was a split off somewhere where the fallen angels mixed in with them. That's what I was saying.
So then, by that logic, you're telling me that all melanated people come from that one bloodline.
I know. I said it came from that tree. But
that tree is one bloodline, sis. The tree is one bloodline.
I understand that, but somewhere there's a split somewhere.
Okay,
the bottom line is that bloodline is still going to be there, whether there's a split or not. Just because they don't mate with other people, that bloodline is still there. That's the whole point.
Tell me what the creation story says. I ain't making that. I'm just telling you they were all relatives.
Creation story. They're talking about the relatives. They're talking about the relatives as far as for those elite bloodlines. That's who they're talking about. They never talk about the people that are being conquered. They don't tell you who their bloodlines is, or this, that, or the other, or what positions or titles they actually held before being conquered.
But in this, they don't care.
No, but the thing is, that story says that. That story does not account for the thousands of tribes. It doesn't account for every bloodline. Period. It's only talking about those specific groups.
Yeah, that's true.
Exactly.
That's all we're saying.
Exactly.
My bloodline does not go back to that book or any of those characters in that book.
Right.
So none of that shit pertain to me. They telling you what they did.
Right. And that's the only reason we keep harping on it. We want to be clear. Exactly, Brother Sean. Exactly. All right, so here we go. But that was a good discussion, y'all. Either way it goes, that was a good discussion, and God doggone it needed to be had. All right, so I left off with no further known settlement by non-African colonists occurred until the arrival in 1821 of free blacks from the United States. Colonization 1821 to 1847. From around the 1800s in the United States, people opposed to slavery were planning ways to achieve freedom of more slaves and ultimately to abolish the institution. At the same time, slaveholders in the South opposed having free blacks in their states, as they believed the free people threatened the stability of the slave society. While they were gradually freed in the North, the former slaves and other free blacks suffered considerable social and legal discrimination. Some northern states and territories prohibited or severely restricted entry by free people of color. All right, so remember, this lines up with what the author, Nancy Eisenberg, was saying when she said that, and this was around 1822 that she talked about the requirements for voting. Jackson's appeal as a presidential candidate was not about real democracy then, but instead of attraction to certain class of land-grabbing whites and the embrace of rude instinct of masculine liberty. He did not stand for universal male suffrage. Indeed, it was not the United States, but Liberia, a country founded by the British and former American slaves, that first established universal suffrage for adult men in 1839. All right? So this lines exactly up with what the author is talking about. Some abolitionists, including distinguished blacks such as shipbuilder Paul Cuffey, or Cuffey. Now, how Cuffey, if all, quote, quote, blacks were slaves from Africa, how he get all that money to be a shipbuilder? Just as I thought. Cuffey believed that blacks should return to the, quote, quote, African homeland. All right? Despite many having been in the United States for generations. All right? So that's the cover story, the African homeland. But anyhow, Cuffey's dream was that free African American and free slaves could establish a prosperous colony in Africa, one based on immigration and trade. All right? So again, I'm going to go back to Nancy Eisenberg when she kind of already told us that when the freed blacks were double-crossed by Jackson, that's what made them set up shop with the permission of the crown over in Liberia. Okay? So it wasn't about going back to no damn Africa, because those melanated folks were from Europe. All right. So despite many having been in the United States for generations, okay, so that's your clue also. Been in the United States for generations. All right. Cuffy's dream was that free African Americans and free slaves could establish a prosperous colony in Africa, one based on immigration and trade. Okay? That's exactly what the Americas was supposed to be based on, right? So same formula. In 1811, Cuffy founded the Friendly Society of Sierra Leone, a cooperative black group intended to encourage the black settlers of Sierra Leone and the natives of Africa generally in the cultivation of their soil by the sale of their produce. As Wright put it, Cuffy hoped to send at least one vessel each year to Sierra Leone, transporting African American settlers and goods to the colony and returning with marketable African products. Okay, so in other words, commerce. The first ship, the Elizabeth, deported New York on February 6, 1820 for West Africa, carrying 86 settlers. Between 1821 and 1838, the American Colonization Society developed the first settlement, which was known as Liberia. On July 26, 1847, Liberia declared itself a free sovereign nation. So now let's be clear. Let's not lose track of the fact. This is the same formula. You got these Europeans, melanated Europeans, coming over to Africa. That's not their shit. That's not their shit. Infringing on the indigenous people, setting up shop to conduct commerce. Same exact thing happened in the Americas. Same exact thing happened in Europe. First ideas of colonization. As early as the period of the American Revolution, many white members of the American society thought that African Americans could not succeed in living in their society as free people. Some considered blacks physically and mentally inferior to whites, and others believed that the racism and society polarization resulting from slavery were insurmountable obstacles for integration of races. Thomas Jefferson was among those who proposed colonization in Africa, relocating freed blacks outside the new nation. All right? So, really what was going on there is that they wanted some freed blacks up out of the Americas because it was the white Europeans that the black nobility was putting on. They were the ones stepping into those roles to run the corporation that became known as the United States of America. So that's what time that was. It was moving out the freed blacks or the black Europeans over to Africa. So meaning get your ass from over in the Americas trying to run shit. Now it's time for the Caucasians. We're going to be running this company. You go set up your company in Africa. But make no mistake about it, both of those companies were subsidiaries to the European crown. All right? Colonies in Africa. In 1787, Britain had started to resettle the poor. In 1787, Britain had started to resettle the black poor of London. And I cannot make this shit up, y'all. I told y'all they reshuffled everyone. I told you they reshuffled everyone. White folks, they reshuffled. Melanated folks, they reshuffled. In 1787, Britain had started to resettle the black poor of London. So more than likely, those black poor of London were probably the indigenous Brits in the colony of Freetown in modern-day Sierra Leone. So melanated folks, when you are taking these DNA tests and it's coming back West Africa from these territories of Negro land, yeah, okay then. Okay.
Yeah,
many were black. I'm sorry, go ahead, Brother Sean.
That was part of the scam because they have taken so many people over there. Exactly. And when they come up with the blood tests and be like, oh, well, you know, y'all originated from over here because there's people over here with the same blood type. No, they originated from here. And y'all took them over there.
Right, right. Because, but, I'm sorry, go ahead, Brother Sean.
They was reshuffling everybody from everywhere because also over in that Sierra Leone thing, didn't they have like a colony named after New York and Pennsylvania and this, that, and the other because they were naming them based upon the people that they were taking and sending over there?
That is correct.
And then they turned around and participated in the fuckery and started fucking over the indigenous people there.
Yep, that is exactly correct. That is exactly correct. And what they weren't telling you in those DNA tests, this one person broke down, if you look at the breakdown of the DNA, you really see European in there, and this is for melanated folks taking these tests, and you saw the Americas. That made it, so it makes sense. All of this is adding up. So here we go. Many were black loyalists, former American slaves who had been freed for the exchange, had been freed in exchange for their services during the American Revolution. The Crown offered resettlement to former slaves who had first resettled in Nova Scotia. The black loyalists there found both the discrimination and climate hard to bear. Wealthy African American ship owner Paul Cuffey thought that colonization was worth supporting. Aided by support from certain members of Congress and British officials, he transported 38 American blacks to Freetown in 1816 at his own expense. He died in 1817, but his private initiative helped arouse public interest in the idea of colonization. Okay, so again, I'm going to say, how did Paul Cuffey get that type of wealth? If all melanated people came from Africa as slaves. But anyway, the African Colonization Society, ACS, was founded in 1817 by Virginia politician Charles F. Mercer and Presbyterian minister Robert Finley of New Jersey. The goal of the ACS was to settle free blacks outside of the United States. Its method was to help them relocate to Africa. So I'm going to read that again. so folks can start to get this. The ACS was founded in 1817 by Virginia politician Charles F. Mercer and Presbyterian minister Robert Finley of New Jersey. The goal of the ACS was to settle freed blacks outside of the United States. Its method was to help them relocate to Africa. Reverse migration. All right, so starting in January 1820, the ACS sent ships from New York to West Africa. The first had 88 free black immigrants and 3 white ACS agents on board. The agents were to find an appropriate area for settlement. Additional ACS representatives arrived in the second ACS ship, the Nautilus. In December 1821, they acquired Cape Masrado, a 36-mile-long strip of land near present-day Monrovia, from the indigenous ruler King Peter, perhaps with some threat force. So I'll go into King Peter in a second, but let me get through this. From the beginning, the colonists were attacked by indigenous peoples whose territory this was, such as the Malinke tribe. In addition, they suffered from disease, the harsh climate, lack of food and medicine, and poor housing conditions. Okay, so now if they was going through this drama, the 88 folks, 88 free black immigrants, and the 3 white ACS people, how was millions of people transported from Africa to the Americas? So it just shows you that was a false narrative. All right, but anyway, until 1835, 5 more colonies were created by the Colonization Society of 5 different states in the U.S. And here we go, Sean, with Brother Sean, with what you was talking about. Republic of Maryland, Kentucky in Africa, Mississippi in Africa, Louisiana, Liberia, and that set up the Pennsylvania State Colonization Society, and one by the U.S. government in the vicinity of the ACS settlement. The first colony on Cape Masrado was extended along the coast as well as inland, sometimes by the use of force against the native tribes. Okay, so that's 2 accounts that they're saying they done came over to Africa talking about some goddamn colonization, taking the indigenous people in what's now known as Africa, taking their fucking land. It's the same script. It's the same script, the same formula. That's why we keep telling y'all, look at the family bloodlines. All right. In 1838, these settlements came together to create the Commonwealth of Liberia. Monrovia was named the capital. By 1842, 4 of the other American settlements were incorporated into Liberia, and the 5th was destroyed by the indigenous people. The colonists of African American descent became known as Americo-Liberians. Many were of mixed race, including European ancestry. So I'm going to read that again. Now, this is absolutely fucking sums it all up. Many were of mixed race, including European ancestry. So they done brought their asses over there, taking over the indigenous people's stuff. Now, if free slaves were from Africa, it just don't add up. Wouldn't you think that they would have some type of welcome wagon, or am I just missing something? All right. They remained African American in their education, religion, and culture, and they did not identify with the indigenous, non-Christian people. I'm going to say that again. Many were of mixed race, including European ancestry. They remained African Americans in their education, religion, and culture, and they did not identify with the indigenous, non-Christian people. So I'm going to pause in case Brother Sean or Sis, you all want to put something on it.
This sounds like stuff we've been over before, but it's just the way that they've taken people from everywhere and used melanated people against each other. Yep. I'm talking about outside the bloodlines, having the common, quote-unquote, common folk hating each other because of things that they've implemented.
Yep.
You take and you put all these people in one place. You got all these melanated people from other regions taken from the melanated indigenous there, using everybody as pawns to make everybody hate and mistrust each other.
Yep.
I mean, this just goes to show the tension between melanated people because of stuff that's in your DNA, experiences that your ancestors have had with other frequencies. If frequency is in the DNA, it's in the bloodline. You don't have to personally know this person just to have that feeling. Because I'm quite sure everybody go through it, and some people you come around and I just don't like them. I don't like their vibe, their energy, nothing. I don't even want to be around them.
Right.
And you don't know this person from the man in the moon. But it's just something about them that just don't rub you right.
Right.
It could have anything to do with the bloodline and all the things that we've been through.
Right. And then if they do something that's out of pocket, first thing you say, I knew that motherfucker was dirty.
Right.
Woo, woo, woo. Exactly.
That's what your ancestors saying. And I told your ass that nigga wasn't shit.
Yep.
And you didn't want to listen.
Right. So melanated people, you listen closely. This shit should hit you like a fucking ton of bricks. We done took and told you. We've been tooking and telling you for quite some time now, for some years. And I had to break it down simply and tell you this was black on black crime long before the white man got involved in this bullshit. So there it is. They telling you plain as day that the Americans, the melanated / AKA black Americans, took their asses over to Africa, and the Africans wasn't feeling them like that because, first of all, who the fuck are you coming on my ancestral land with this fuck shit. What you mean you want me to grow something and sell it? Bitch, what I have to sell something for? We've been living on this land for millions of years, growing our little crops. See, what are you talking about owning something? They had no concept of those things. So they didn't want to be bothered with their fucking asses. So war broke out. And then to top it off, what is so fucking disgusting about it, that those, quote, quote, African Americans who were really Britain, black Britons, remixed as free slaves, took their funky asses over there, and they never even identified. They never identified with the indigenous, non-Christian people. So that right there shows you that Christianity was not in Africa, so folks could come up off of that motherfucking bullshit. That concept of Christianity goes back to the Greek, the Roman bloodline. So the Africans wasn't feeling them. The Africans knew they were not their people. And those melanated Americans rebranded as African Americans, they didn't identify with them either. So now you would think if you just coming up out of fucking slavery, that you was captured from this land, that you would be able to hit the shores and be like, you know, my ancestors came from here, we was took from blah, blah, blah. Them Africans would have automatically said, they would be able to look at you and say, oh, well, your people came from da-da-da-da-da region, da-da-da-da-da tribe. But they weren't able to do that because they were not the same people. It was the opposite. It's like, who the fuck are you? No, you ain't finna come over here with that shit. You're not welcome here. And that's the same shit to this day as we sit here having this conversation, how the Africans feel today. They know that you are not a part of them. They know that. They can fucking look at you and tell you're not a part of them. All right. High mortality. Immigrants to Liberia suffer, Immigrants to Liberia suffered the highest mortality rate of any country since modern record keeping began. Of the 4,571 immigrants who arrived in Liberia from 1820 to 1843, only 1819 survived until 1843. The ACS knew of the high death rate but continued to send more people to the colony. Professor Six writes, the organization continued to send people to Liberia while very much aware of the chances for survival. The organizers of the ACS considered themselves to be humanitarians performing the work of God. The attitude prevented them from accepting certain realities of their crusade. Any problems, including those of disease and death, were viewed as trials of tribulation that God provides as a means of testing the fortitude of man. After every report of disaster in Liberia, the managers simply renewed their efforts. Once the organization was formed and the auxiliaries established, a new force developed which also prevented the society from admitting the seriousness of the mortality problem. The desire to perpetuate the existence of the corporate body became a factor. To have admitted that the mortality rate made the price of, I'm going to read this because we're going to go back to this and put logic to it. To have admitted that the mortality rate made the price of immigration far too high to be continued would have meant the end of the organization. So now this is 1843. If they couldn't do it back then without high mortality rate, how the fuck did they bring millions of Africans over here? Starting in the 1600s. Because it didn't happen that way. The managers were seemingly unprepared to advise the termination of their project and by extension their own jobs. Handing over command to Americo-Liberians, the ACS administrators gradually gave the maturing colony more self-governance. In 1839, it was reorganized into the Commonwealth of Liberia. In 1841, the Commonwealth's first non-white governor, Joseph Jenkins Roberts, was appointed by ACS's governing board. In early 1847, the ACS directed Liberian leadership to declare independence. On July 26, 1847, 11 signatures to the Liberian Declaration of Independence was established, the Free and Independent Republic of Liberia. All right, so the same pretty much flavor on how they did the Americas is how they did Liberia to set up their colonies. Americo-Liberian rule 1847 to 1980. Between 1847 and 1980, the state of Liberia was dominated by a small minority of black colonists and their descendants, known collectively as Americo-Liberians. And that's a damn shame, y'all, that they went over there, took over those indigenous folks' shit, and a small minority of black colonists running these indigenous people's shit. It's fucking disgusting. So, the Americo-Liberian minority, many of whom were mixed race African Americans, tended to marry within their group. Okay, so you heard that, Brother Sean? Yep. Don't they clearly point out that they was not fucking marrying the Africans?
Exactly.
They had established plantations and businesses and were generally richer than the indigenous people of Liberia and exercised overwhelmingly political power. Politics. Politically, Liberia was dominated by two political parties. The Americo-Liberians had limited the franchise to prevent indigenous Liberians from voting in the election. Now, I'm just going to refresh everyone's memory from White Trash, The 400-Year Untold History of Class in America by Nancy Eisenberg, that this group of freed blacks went over to Liberia as a result of Andrew Jackson not giving them the right to vote. So you mean to tell me they brought their dusty asses over to Africa, fucked over the indigenous people, and turned around and did the same thing to them? The Liberian Party, later the Republican Party, was supported primarily by mixed-race African Americans from poor backgrounds, while the true Whig Party received much of its following from the richer blacks. From the first presidential election in 1847, the Liberian Party held political dominance. It used its position of power to attempt to cripple its opposition. In 1869, however, the Whigs won the presidential election under Edward James Roe. Although Roe was deposed after 2 years and the Republicans returned to the government, the Whigs regained power in 1878. This party maintained power constantly afterward. Right? So again, I'm just going to point out, it's the same exact script that was followed in the fucking Americas. The same exact script. And we keep telling you all that these systems are not set up for we the people. They are set up for the purpose of commerce and for the benefit of the crown. They don't give a fuck about you voting and all of that and having rights, because it was never set up for you. It was set up for the crown and they boys them. And more importantly, the crown's family to get the benefits of the resources forever and ever and forever and ever and forever and ever and ever. They don't give a fuck if you got to change the name of political parties. They don't give a fuck if you got to change the seal. Just run them their ends. And the indigenous people, fuck you. We own your shit, and we going to keep capitalizing on your shit. It's the same exact script. A series of rebellions among the indigenous Liberian population took place between 1850s and 1920s. In 1854, a newly independent African-American state in the region, the Republic of Maryland, was forced by an insurgency of the Grebo and the Kru people to join Liberia. Liberia's expansion brought the colony into the border disputes with the French and British colonies in French Guinea and Sierra Leone, respectively. So again, the same fucking script. Was not the French and the British, not the Brits, not the indigenous Brits. The British were over in America. The Americas fighting over fucking territory.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same fucking script. The presence and protection of the United States Navy in West Africa until 1916 prevented any military threat to Liberian territory or independence. So that's even deep, that the muscle came from the U.S. Corp Navy all the way up to 1916. We keep telling you all, it's the same kingdoms. It's the exact same kingdoms. It's the exact same script. So when you are under the delusion of we the people, it wasn't fucking talking about you. Because if it was talking about you, you wouldn't be struggling. You wouldn't have to be talking about what they ain't honoring, this, that, and the third. Because the shit wasn't fucking set up for you. Either you are a subject, a citizen, or you are indigenous. But bottom line, no fucks are given about you and yours, because it's about them and theirs. Society. America, Liberian, and Indigenous Segregation, 1847 through 1940. The social order in Liberia was dominated by a group of Americo-Liberians. Although descendants from peoples of African origin, the ancestors of the Americo-Liberians had been born in the United States for generations before immigrating to Africa. They held American culture, religion, and social values shaped by their heritage. Okay, so Wikipedia, whoever put this bullshit up, they're contradicting themselves, because if they were indigenous to Africa, again, they wouldn't have had the struggles that they had. So that's some straight fucking bullshit. Those people came over there as conquerors. Bottom line, fucking with them indigenous African shit, taking their shit. So that's why they never adopted the culture of the Africans, because they weren't Africans. Like many Americans and Europeans of the period, the Americo-Liberian held belief in the religious superiority of Protestant Christianity. Now let me sip my water. Who was a Protestant Christian? Sean, you remember?
Oh, you mean as far as for? Oh, it wasn't a
from
Protestant?
the crown. From the crown, on the crown side. That was Stuart. That was King James and them.
Right. The protesting Christians.
Right. So now, run that past me again, how the Stuarts weren't motherfucking involved. Nobody has.
Nobody can say that ever.
Nobody gets a pass on my watch.
Not at all.
All right. All right. So these Americo-Liberians, their religion was Protestant Christianity, and the culture power of systematic oppression over indigenous animism and culture. So that animism is the belief that objects, places, and creatures all possess a distinct spiritual essence. Potentially, animism perceives all things, animal, plants, rocks, river, weather, systems, human handwork, and perhaps even words, as animated and alive. Animism is used in the anthropology of religion. So the Protestant Christianity and the culture power system of oppression over the indigenous culture, their spirituality system tied to nature and culture. So again, how were the Black British in the best interest of the indigenous people?
They weren't.
Exactly. Nobody gets a pass. All they were doing was repeating what had happened in the Americas, what had happened over in Europe.
Says,
If
I remember correctly, some of them took that deal as instead of becoming prisoners of war, and fighting for home. They took the deal to go there and recolonize.
That is correct.
They decided to become agents for the crown.
That is correct. That is correct.
They was basically sellouts, and they said that they didn't last there, not through a generation or two, and they were all wiped out.
Yep, that's what it said. Yep, that's what was said. That's what was said.
So people sit up and wonder how come, quote unquote, Africans don't like, quote unquote, African American.
Right. Which they think we're even stupid for calling ourselves two fucking continents. But go ahead on, Brother Sean.
Right. And they be quick to tell you that you ain't from over there.
Shit. They have no problem telling you that.
People still want to sit up and claim that and try and go over there, and ain't nothing but a colonial corporation, and they stooge offered you to come to a dump.
Yep.
Did you see that video showing all that computer waste and everything over there in Ghana? It's literally a goddamn scrap heap.
Yeah, and you know, Ghana is what they're promoting for quote, quote, African Americans to go back over there. And Ghana is a hot fucking mess. And I know two people that lived in Ghana decades ago. And Ghana wasn't rocking with, quote, quote, African Americans fucking back then. You know what they call them? White. So they don't even view them as being the same as them because they know they're not the same people. They know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah, I would be pissed too. Shit. You coming over, think you finna come back over to my shit because like you said, Brother Sean, my DNA from my ancestors, remember when y'all brought y'all stinking asses over here back in the day. Taking shit. Africa ain't never came over here and claimed not one, quote, quote, African American. They ain't never sent no motherfucking request to get their, quote, quote, people. They ain't never motherfucking went to the United Nations on behalf of their people in the Americas because it didn't fucking happen that way.
Not at all. They at the UN representing themselves. They're at the UN representing themselves.
Exactly. They don't give a fuck about African Americans because we're not their people.
Right. And if you watch the Sisters channel, Dr. Mumby show, she's strictly about Africa. She don't give a fuck about that damn nigga over here in America.
Right. As she should. I ain't mad at that sister.
Exactly. Oh,
that's
I ain't mad at her at all. Right. I love the way she represents her people. I ain't got no problems with her at all. I'm just saying that should be a wake-up call to our people that ain't not damn motherfucker over there doing no broadcast talking about trying to free nobody over here, claiming nobody over here, nothing. But niggas over here doing broadcasts talking about Africa, bigging Africa up, motherland, Africa this, Africa that, we got to go help Africa.
And they ain't studying your ass.
Right.
Exactly.
They don't even want you over there. They close their borders
too. They really don't. They really don't. The ones that's struggling and shit, They don't want your fucking ass over there. If you coming over there, you better have a long wallet. That's what they want.
Exactly. And when your money gone, you should be gone.
Exactly. They give less than a fuck of that bullshit you talking. Because again, they can look at you and tell, oh no, you're an American. You're an American. And it was offensive to them when Americans were going over to Ghana, we're the same. No, the fuck we ain't the same, is what the Africans will tell them. You're white. Mm-hmm. You're white. You're not an African. They know who the fuck they are. You don't know who you are. And don't get an attitude with those of us that know who the fuck we are. Because we didn't done the research. We got the fucking receipts. We've taken the time to go through the records. All right. So the American, I'm sorry, go ahead, sis.
I like to say you get a cold shoulder here in America when you're in a room full of them, too. Because I used to go to dinner over people's houses I used to work with, and they had their relatives there. It was not too pleasant, as far as the greeting. They look at you like, oh, okay. They just that way. They're proud people.
Yeah, they are a proud people, and again, when you know who you are, they rock with you. They rock with you, but all of that, you trying to take their culture, that's an insult to them.
No, I told them I was an American, and they asked me who I was.
And they asked. Like, well, damn. They probably had much respect for you for knowing who the fuck you are.
Yeah, because they asked me, and I told them, I said, I'm an Indian. You mean from over our land? I said, American. They said, oh. But, yeah.
And they already knew that by looking at you, but they just wanted to know if you knew.
Yeah, probably. I never thought about it like that. I thought, well, they...
Yeah, trust me. They already know. They know who you are. All they have to do is look at you.
I'm coming through the door, and they quizzing me, Okay.
Yeah, they know who you are just by looking at you.
Yeah, that's true.
They look at your bone structure. They look at your build, even the texture of your hair.
Yeah, because I went to get my foot fixed, and a lady was talking to me, and I told her about who we really are. She said, yeah, I can see it in you. I can see it by your mouth. I thought, my mouth?
Yeah, they can tell. Absolutely.
Yeah, she said,
they can
know who you are.
Tell. Absolutely. So it goes, the Americo-Liberians created communities and social infrastructure closely based on what they knew American society. They spoke English and built churches and houses in styles resembling those they were familiar with in southern United States. Okay? So in other words, they built houses and styles with that Roman, Greek architecture, old European architecture. Although they never constituted more than 5% of the population of Liberia, they controlled key resources that allowed them to enslave the local native peoples and control their access to the ocean, modern technical skills, literacy, and higher levels of education, and valuable relationships with many United States institutions, including the American government. Now, I'm going to reread this again. This ain't white folks doing this. I want the melanated people to be fucking clear. This is not white folks doing this. These are, quote, quote, African Americans, which that's bullshit. These were freed blacks from Europe, or freed blacks who were indigenous to the Americas that took a fucking deal. They spoke English and built churches and houses in styles resembling those that were familiar with in the southern United States. Although they never made up more than 5% of the population of Liberia. They controlled key resources that allowed them to enslave the local native people and control their access to the ocean. Now, if this shit ain't fucking deep, you tell me. I'm indigenous to the land. My people have been accessing, kicking it on that ocean for thousands of years, if not millions of years. And here, your black American ass come over here and tell me what the fuck I can do on my land? Modern technical skills, literacy, and higher levels of education, and valuable relationship with many United States institutions, including the American government, reflecting the system of segregation in the United States. The Americo-Liberians created a culture and racial caste system with themselves at the top and indigenous Liberians at the bottom. They believed in a form of racial equality, which meant that all residents of Liberia had the potential to become civilized through Western-style education and conversion to Christianity. What the fuck does that sound like? I'll wait. Exactly what happened over in the Americas. Exact same thing that happened in the Americas. We told y'all it was the same bloodline that did it then. It's the same bloodline that's doing it over here. This wasn't white folk. It wasn't white folk in the Americas. It wasn't white folk in Europe. It wasn't white folk in Liberia. White folk came after that shit had already been set up in the Americas. They stepped into those roles. Or as John Levy says, the inheritors of those roles. Social change, 1940 through 1980. During World War II, thousands of indigenous Liberians migrated from the nation's rural interior to the coastal region in search of jobs. Okay, so fast forward all through they little areas, that system, that Roman Babylonian system had been instituted. Now the indigenous people have to fucking work to earn a living on their shit. The Liberian government had long opposed this kind of migration, but was no longer able to restrain it. In the decades after 1945, the Liberian government received hundreds of millions of dollars of unrestricted foreign investment, which destabilized the Liberian economy. Government revenue rose enormously, but was being grossly embezzled by government officials. Growing economic disparities caused increased hostility between indigenous groups and Americo-Liberians. The social tensions led by President Tubman to enfranchise the indigenous Liberians either in 1951 or 1963, Tubman and his Whig Party continued to repress political opposition and to rig elections. Who else's name, they say in history, carry that Tubman last name? Brother Shine or sister, are y'all still with me?
Yeah, I'm still with you, sis.
All right.
I'm with you, but my phone this is my second phone done died, so I'm gonna have to go.
Okay. All right.
It just
okay. All right. You dropping off, sis?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to drop off.
Okay, sweet pea. Peace and love. Thank you so much.
Peace and love to you too. Peace and love, Brother Shine.
Wholeness and power,
okay.
sis.
My phones are going.
We're not going to have too much longer anyway. We only got 26 more minutes long. So, Brother Sean, who in the Americas carry that last name of Tubman?
Who in the Americas carry the last name of Tubman?
Wasn't that Harriet Tubman?
Yeah. Oh, you mean the steward?
Exactly. Harriet
That's
Tubman
all I
was
think
a
about
steward.
when I hear it.
Absolutely. Harriet Tubman was a steward. We gave you those receipts out of the Negro Question, Part 6, the 13 Black Colonies by Lee Cummings. So when she was, quote, quote, over in the Americas, supposedly freeing slaves, no, she was freeing her own fucking people. The man provided receipts on those ship manifests of the stewards and the Rosses coming over to the Americas from Europe. So now you mean to tell me that another motherfucking Tubman showed up in Liberia as the president? This shit can't get no better than this. It's there. You just have to do the research, and it all ties together. Economics. The suppression of the slave trade in West Africa by American and British navies after 1808 also produced new settlers, as these two navies would settle liberated slaves in Liberia or Sierra Leone rather than trying to return them to their homeland. Now, that shit don't even sound right. That don't even sound right. So y'all admitting that they kept doing reverse migration to Africa. Oh, but we're not going to return them to their other homelands. We just going to dump them over in Liberia and Sierra Leone. Yeah, okay then.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But we didn't already prove, just by you telling us President Tubman, we already know that Tubman name comes from Europe, tied back to the Stewart and the Ross bloodline. So y'all can get the fuck up off the bullshit that you were returning the slaves back to Africa. Oh, but no, we're not going to return them back to where they really are. We just going to put them in this colony. No, boo. Those were those freed, quote, quote, blacks who were really the black Europeans and indigenous freed people who took the deal and who were probably married up with the black Europeans. So, in the later 19th century, Liberia had to compete economically with European colonies in Africa. The economy of Liberia was always based on the production of agricultural produce for export. In particular, Liberia's important coffee industry was destroyed in the 1870s by the emergence of production in Brazil. Okay, so I didn't know coffee originally Liberia was knocking it out the park. Anyway, new technology available in Europe increasingly drove Liberian shipping companies out of business. Although Roy's government attempted to procure funding for a railway in 1871, the plan never materialized. The first railroad was not built until 1945. From the late 19th century, European powers such as the United Kingdom and Germany invested in infrastructures in their African colonies, making them more competitive in terms of getting products to market, improving communications, etc. Which would make sense because by 1945, the New World Order had been established. Because the New World Order was the transfer of the black nobility kingdom to the Caucasian kingdom. So sure, they like, well, I don't give a fuck about that old world. I don't give a fuck about funding them. They can get the fuck on. We got our own New World. We got our own colonies set up. We're gonna put money or investments in that. Get the fuck out of here, old world. From the late 19th century, European powers such as, I talked about that. The national currency, the Liberian dollar, collapsed in 1907. The country was later forced to adopt the United States dollar. The Liberian government was constantly dependent on foreign loans at high rates of exchange, which endangered the country's independence. In 1926, Firestone, an American rubber company, started the world's largest rubber plantation in Liberia. Okay, so this is what esotericism was talking about earlier. This industry created 25,000 jobs, and rubber quickly became the backbone of the Liberian economy. In the 1950s, rubber accounted for 40% of the national budget. So just imagine how many trees they had to cut down for this fucking commerce. During the 1930s, Liberia signed concessions agreements with Dutch, Danish, German, and Polish investors in what has been described as an open-door economic policy. Between 1946 and 1960, exports of natural resources such as iron, timber, and rubber rose strongly. In 1971, Liberia had the world's largest rubber industry and was the third largest exporter of iron ore. Since 1948, ship registration was another important source of state's revenue. Now notice, all of this economics, they're talking about utilizing the natural resources of that land is controlled by people who are not indigenous to that land. From 1962 until 1980, the U.S. donated $280 million in aid to Liberia, in exchange for which Liberia offered its land free of rent for U.S. government facilities. So the folks, the immigrants, who that wasn't their shit, you gonna turn out and rent out to another motherfucker? Throughout the 1970s, the price of rubber in the world's commodity market was depressed, putting pressure on Liberian state's finances, international relations. After 1927, the League of Nations investigated accusations that the Liberian government forcibly recruited and sold indigenous peoples as contract labor or slaves. Do you all get that? You African Americans? This was in 1970, 1927. That African Americans were selling indigenous people to Africa as contract labor or slaves. Because that's the world that they came from. Back in Europe, okay, in its 1930 report, the League acknowledged the Liberian government for systematically and for years fostering and encouraging a policy of gross intimidation and suppression. Suppressing the natives prevent him from realizing his powers and limitations and prevent him from asserting himself in any way whatever for the benefit of the dominant and colonizing race, although originally the same African stock as themselves. It says, see Presidency, Charles King, all right, and President Charles D. King hastily resigned. Okay, and notice they both had Charles in there. Okay, that ties back to King Charles on the European crown. That black nobility. Relations with the United States. I'm trying to finish this up. How much time do we have, y'all? Hold on.
17 minutes.
Okay, 17 minutes. Okay, I'm gonna try to finish it up. But I had to walk through this, y'all. International relationships. Okay, we talked about that. Relations with the United States. The United States had a long history of intervening in Liberia's internal affairs, repeatedly sending naval vessels to help suppress insurrection by indigenous tribes before and after independence in 1821, 1843, 1876, 1910, and 1915. The United States had lost interest in Liberia after 1876, and the country became closely tied to British capital. Starting in 1909, the U.S. became heavily involved in the country. By 1909, Liberia faced serious external threats to its sovereignty from British over unpaid foreign loans and the annexation of its borderlands. Told y'all that they had to pay back up to the crown. No fucks was given. In 1910, the U.S. arranged a 40-year international loan. 1912, sorry, y'all. A 40-year international loan of $1.7 million against which Liberia had to agree to four Western powers: United States, Britain, France, and Germany, controlling Liberia's government revenues until 1926. American administration of the border police stabilized the frontier with Sierra Leone, part of the British Empire, and checked French ambitions to annex more Liberian territories. The American Navy established a coaling station in Liberia. President William Howard Taft made American support for Liberia independence and prosperity and reform high priorities. The major American role was training the Liberian Army, known as Liberian Frontier Force, using elite black officers from regular United States Army. The American presence warned away European imperial powers, defeated a series of local rebellions, and helped bring in American technology to develop the resource-rich interior. Democracy was not a high priority, as the 15,000 Americo-Liberians had full control of 750,000 locals. The Cruz and Grebo tribes remained highly reluctant to accept control from Monrovia, but they were not powerful enough to overcome a regime strongly supported by the United States Army and Navy. The American officers included Charles Young, Benjamin Davis, and others were skilled at training recruits, helping the government minimize corruption and advocating loans from American corporations while monitoring the resulting flow of funds. All right, so you African Americans, who came over to Africa colonizing and fucking with folks? World War I. Liberia remained neutral for most of World War I. It joined the war on the Allied side in 4th of August 1917. After its declaration of war, Liberia expelled its resident German merchants as they constituted the country's largest investors and trading partners. Liberia suffered economically as a result. In 1926, the Liberian government gave concession to the American rubber company Firestone to start the world's largest rubber plantation at Harbal, Liberia. At the same time, Firestone arranged a $5 million private loan to Liberia. In the 1930s, Liberia was again virtually bankrupt. After some United States pressure, it agreed to an insistent plan from the League of Nations. As part of this plan, 2 key officials of the League were placed in position to advise the Liberian government. World War II. In 1942, Liberia signed a defense pact with the United States. Rubber was a strategically important commodity, and Liberia assured the U.S. and its allies of all natural rubber they needed. Also, Liberia allowed the U.S. to use its territory as a brigade for transportation of soldiers and war supplies to construct military bases, airports, the free port of Monrovia, roads to the interior, etc. Most of these personnel who passed through Liberia were African American soldiers who at the time were in segregated army divisions being deployed into military service in Europe. The American military presence boosted the Liberian economy. Thousands of laborers descended from the interior to the coastal regions. The country's huge iron ore deposits were made accessible to commerce. The Defense Areas Agreement between the United States and Liberia entailed the United States financed construction of Roberts Field Airport, the free port of Monrovia, and roads into the interior of Liberia. By the end of World War II, approximately 5,000 American troops had been stationed in Liberia. Arguments sustaining this notion are that the World War II infrastructure developments did not positively affect social and political struggles in Liberia, and that decades after the development from World War II, Americo-Liberians disproportionately controlled and benefited from Liberia's growing economy and increase in foreign investment. All right, so I'm going to stop there because I know we're running out of time, and we're going to definitely pick back up and conclude that section of the whole Negro land and the Liberia connection. And next week we're going to get into from the white trash, the 400 untold history of class in America. We're going to get into how the come up of the white race, how the rebranding of the white race took place. All right, Brother Sean. Because plus y'all, I'm getting bored.
Hey, sis.
Uh-huh.
I got a text from Sis Coralie. She said that Scarface and Slim Thug got the coronas.
Oh, they do?
The rappers. Yeah, the rappers.
Oh, okay then.
I'm just saying, if it's starting to, I don't know, maybe it'll start getting a little closer to home now once you start getting more melanated celebrities caught up in this stuff. Because, I mean,
right,
all
because
these
they
folks...
have to convince the melanated folks, because the melanated folks pretty much like, get the fuck out of here. We can't get it, right?
Right. But it's just strange that it's the melanated celebrities. I mean, we know that they sold and cut a deal to get to where they was, but
right.
Just to think that so many of them is possibly involved with that adrenochrome and pedophilia. I mean, selling your soul for fame is one thing, but to just be immoral and just do all type of unnatural things beyond. Just ain't worth it.
But you know what? But in their perspective, once you done sold your soul, shit. Everything else, you know what I'm saying? Everything else is
right.
carte blanche. Like, oh, well, shit. I'm trapped anyway.
So I'm just thinking, considering those two have it. And didn't we just recently have BET award shows and all that type of stuff?
Yeah.
And they say that it could lay dormant for 20-something days before.
That's what they say.
Well, this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, just get your popcorn and just see how it unfolds. Because there's a lot going on. It's definitely a battle within the corporation over debt. And also the cover-up of the planetary shift. But hopefully, as we're walking through this series, that folks are seeing that it's the same script over and over again. The same script over and over again. And they give less than a damn, your indigenous status, how you identify yourself as a crayon color, white, black,